we're not urban farmers, we're placemakers. But then what is placemaking? I think as a starting point, we just have to accept that most of us live in cities, and that is where we live our lives, and that is where we have to work if we're trying to get sustainable changes. I want to talk to you quickly about the difference between a place and a space. It's the same difference as a home and a house. A house is just, you know, the walls, the roof, the floor, the furniture. A home is where you feel good, where you feel at home, where you feel comfortable. So that's the difference between the space and a place. A space can be an empty parking lot, a street corner, section of a park, anything that you don't really have any particular feelings to. But a place is somewhere where you feel safe and relaxed, empowered and happy and warm and free and welcome. And you smile a lot and you talk to people, even those that you don't know. To put it in the word of Charlotte Stans, it's about people-centered cities and public spaces that work towards public life. It's an idea that we own and we create these spaces together. It's a set of tools and an approach to put the community right at the front and center of changes where they live. And it's about bringing people together and then getting them to talk to each other. Because when people tell stories of themselves and their places, they begin to understand their places better, and they begin to understand that they can have an impact and changing these places for the better. Ethan says it's a form of community organizing, facilitating, bringing together people and challenging communities to get involved. It's about thinking about the spaces that are outside our living room door and taking responsibility for that. So it's a sort of a new environmental movement that focuses on places as a way to bring together many different issues and causes within a city. That's some of the definitions of what placemaking is. Everyone you talk to will have a different one, but they're all about, getting the community active. A great place is sociable. It has different uses, different activities. It's comfortable. It has seating places. It looks nice. It looks well maintained. It's easy to find. It's easy connected to the rest of the city. You can split it into all these subcategories. That's something you can do on your own time. That would take too much. But what I want to show you is how to think like a placemaker and how that can help us in a community garden. Because these are some key lessons that we've picked up from the placemaking movement and that we continuously implement in our community gardens and edible city activities in Oslo. So the people behind PPF's Project for Public Spaces, they've developed 11 principles of placemaking. And that's what it takes to transform any random space into a place where people are happy and talking to each other and smiling and enjoying their time. I will dive deeper into 3 of these principles. First explaining what they are, and then later I will come back and give you examples of how they are implemented and then how we can use them or how we can take inspiration from this when we work with our community gardens or edible city solutions. So the first principle and the base for everything is that the community is the expert. It's the starting point in developing any concept is to identify all the talents and all the assets within the community. Because in any community, there are people who can provide historical perspective, valuable insights into how the area functions, and an understanding of critical issues. Tapping into this information at the beginning of the process will help to create a sense of community ownership. And that is a great benefit of all. Or looking at these teenagers, if you want to learn what teenagers want, you got to talk to teenagers. So you got to go out and go beyond the usual suspects that participate in municipal discussions. The second principle is called triangulation. I had never heard that word before, but now it's one of my favorite words. It's the process by which some external stimulus, something, provides a linkage between people and prompts strangers to talk to other strangers as if they knew each other. And the example that PPS lists is, for example, if a bench, a wastebasket, and a telephone are placed with no connection to each other, each of them may receive very limited use, but when they're arranged together, along with other amenities, such as a coffee cart, they will naturally bring people together. That is to triangulate. On a broader level, if a children's reading room in a new library is located, so it's near a children's playground, in a park and a food kiosk is added, more activity will occur than if these facilities were located separately. So it means adding more activities appealing to different people in the same place, so that people with more varied interests and hobbies will end up using the place. And when people are doing something together, they will start talking. They also talk like an aspect of triangulation is to aim for at least 10 activities in a place. Places thrive when users have a range of reasons to be there. These might include a place to sit, playgrounds to enjoy, art to touch, music to hear, food to eat, history to experience, and people to meet. And ideally, some of these activities will be unique to that particular place, reflecting the culture and history of the surrounding community. And local residents, of course, like I said in the first principle, the community knows best. The ones who are using the space will be the best source of ideas for what to add. So we shouldn't only create gardening activities to appeal to garden people, but we should have, you know, a bike fixing shop or a playground or a cafe, you know, adding these other functions that will attract people that otherwise would not bother to look at a cabbage grow. The 9th principle is to experiment, and that is to start with lighter, quicker, cheaper. Lighter, quicker, cheaper, that's the phrasing. And that is, experimentation is so important because whoever starts the project doesn't have the full understanding of the complexity of a local community, and the community can change as we go. So the complexity of public spaces is such that you cannot expect to do everything right initially. The best spaces experiment with short-term improvements that can be tested and refined over many years. Elements such as seating, outdoor cafes, public art, striping of crosswalks and pedestrian havens, community gardens and murals are examples of improvements that can be accomplished in a short time, but that we also can test, experiment, develop, improve, or take away if it didn't work as the time goes by. I have some examples from Oslo to illustrate these principles. The first principle is that the community is the expert. So our main tool that we use is a questionnaire called the Place Game. It's a small 2-page questionnaire, but it allows for citizens to analyze 4 different categories of any public space. They analyze the sociability, the uses and activities, the comfort and image, and the accesses and linkages, like if people can find it. And these impressions are scored, given points in a table, and ideas for short-term and long-term improvements are written down on the form. And we've used that for so many of our activities, especially at the community garden in Stensparken, which we started working on last spring. So here's one of our co-creation meetings and neighbors filling out the forms. And then we add up the scores, and it's a very, very simple process. We just add up the scores from the tables from all the respondents. And whatever has the lowest points, that is where we need to work. So we do this place game with different groups all the time. We do it continuously throughout the season to monitor improvements, but also to see like where do we need to focus now. So this is an example a year and a half ago when we started. What we scored the lowest on was events and activities. And then it was just the maintenance, the cleaning, and more and better seating, as well as pride and ownership. That was what this form told us that we needed to prioritize. We've been doing a lot of work since then, and the current strategy doesn't talk about maintenance and cleaning because it looks quite nice now, but it tells us that we need to work on signage. It needs to be easier to find the place from the outside. It needs to be easier identified at the gate, and inside the garden we need to have better signage of the plants. And then we should always, also the respondents tell us that we should have more activities and more events. And we have events all the time, and we use absolutely every community event to gather data, ideas, and suggestions. And then we try to gamify it to give people a good excuse to give us ideas. Here, for example, in this photo, to be able to participate in a simple competition, the kids had to first write down their ideas. So we have some great ideas from the kids of what they want in the garden. But to continuously ask the community their opinions and ideas and suggestions, this also helps us to continuously tailor the community activities and develop the garden according to the people that are actually showing an interest, the ones that are coming to our events, the ones that are asking questions and are asking to be heard. And this wall that we have here is a mobile research unit that we can move out and move with us in different projects. And of course, like the fabulous gray paper that we roll out for all events. One of the ideas that came in this community meeting in June last year was to have a pizza oven built, and I will show you later the magnificent structure that is now in this park. And here the youth are planning one of the community events also. So we use sticker voting for a lot of ideas as one simple way to get the community input. So in this particular activity, we gave each attendee to the event 5 stickers, and we told them to put a sticker on their favorite activities that they want more of moving forward. And that would be their 5 votes, and they can put 5 stickers on one place or spread them over the different ideas. And the suggestions were gardening courses, compost courses, plant swaps, building insect hotels, and similar suggestions. So this told us, for example, that there was very little interest in compost courses, which we had originally planned. Got to breathe in between here. Okay, principle 8, triangulation. So that is to add more elements that will attract a different audience or give people more reasons to stay, and give also people more excuses to talk to each other. So here's the famous pizza oven. It has been built over the summer by youth who have been employed this summer at Stensparken Community Garden. I don't really know when it became a frog. It just happened on the last day of putting up the cement. And then we've also invited the community in to help decorate it. So on the top right, you see some of the neighbors that help put leafy prints on the outside of the pizza prints. This is another project that we did many years ago. This is back in 2015. It was a very rough background to the place. It used to be considered one of the most dangerous places in Oslo, and it's been a hub for drug dealing, basically. One of the key things that we did there was to bring in these huge chess pieces. You see the garden is in these boxes in the background. Before the project started, we were quite unsure if this was a good idea, but we had gotten some feedback from different groups that, yeah, everybody loves chess, and chess is a very sort of multicultural game. It actually turned out that some of the homeless Roma people, who the city had indirectly considered a nuisance, they actually asked us if we could do something to help them get rid of them. But it turned out that they were very keen on engaging other community members in chess matches. And as chess games follow international rules, It was great to see people of completely different cultural backgrounds playing chess together. And there's just a lot of like non-verbal humor in chess, apparently. So it was one of the key factors that helped to sort of mellow down the pace of the place. It helped create an excuse for people to talk to each other. And it helped the sort of unwanted people of the place to become a resource and a community asset. Why not host a circus? This is another one of our garden projects where we've had a massive circus twice. Because there's nothing that is equally admired in any culture as circus artists. So if you want to mobilize a whole community, bring in someone that swallows fire and can do tricks in a trapeze, and you are sure to have a full community on board. Bring in extra furniture. This is in the Stensparken Community Garden as well. Rumor has it that this has become like a favorite date spot for teenagers. And I think every park and every, you know, there's a lack of these like pretty places where people, you know, the teenagers can get their first kiss. And this little swing stand apparently is like one of those community kissing spots. And I think that's fabulous. By the way, it's also a bench, a swing bench that's been built by the local prison. So we also try to think twice about the money that we spend and try to involve other social entrepreneurs where possible. We do a lot of activities also in winter in the community garden when nothing is growing, because if we don't do that, we will lose the connection with people in the fall, and it will be harder to re-establish the connection again in spring. And we want to think as a place. We don't want to frame ourselves as uniquely a garden. We want to be a lovely neighborhood place where people have a good time together and where they meet neighbors and where you can come with or without kids and you can get talking to strangers. We had a New Year's festival in January where this was at the tail end of Corona. We invited all neighbors to come and write their wishes for the new year on these fabric ribbons that were just upcycled bed linens from a secondhand shop. It was so popular and it hung up there for I think 3 months, and a lot of people said that it gave them hope in this sort of endless Corona winter that just seemed to never end. We do silly activities throughout the years. Like in May, we gave away 120 tomato plants that we had cultivated inside our little 40 square meter office, because that would be a way to reach out to those that may have a garden interest as well. And we also try to make sure that you know, in any place, it's a nice triangulation moment to make sure that people can take a selfie. And putting up a selfie frame and adding some extra flowers to it whenever there's an event is, yeah, it's pure placemaking magic. Here's a Halloween monster, for example, for the Halloween frame. Yeah, because Halloween, that's been our biggest success. You know, in this tiny garden, there were about 300 people that came all dressed up as little monsters. So that was our sort of magic moment of really realizing that, okay, what we are doing is really wanted by the community. They are really happy about what's going on here, and they would love to come if we put on good social programming here. The power of 10 I mentioned earlier is that every place should have a minimum of 10 activities and attractions that can appeal to different groups so that different people have different reasons to come. So we're not at 10 yet in Stensparken because it's only been 1.5 years and we're continuously working with the community. But within the EdiCitNet network, we have our project colleagues in Berlin that have been working with their Garden for so many years, and they are a wonderful example of a community garden being much more than a garden. So these are some of the things you can do in a Garden. You can have your bike fixed. You can learn a skill to cook, make, or build something. You can enjoy a concert. You can read a book. You can simply connect with nature, meet friends and hang out in the cafe, grow or eat organic vegetables. It's a prime site for alternative and green tourism. It's been used for community meetings and political rallies. So these are all, so if you look at them, many of these would not bother to come if it was to garden, but indirectly, they're part of making the garden a success. So you don't need to have an interest in gardening to enjoy spending time here. And different people come here for many and different reasons. This is a key to understanding how to make a successful community space. And then at the city level, within the EdiCitNet network, we have a fantastic example in Andernach, where they are developing the entire city with multiple destinations within the city that makes them, in sum, an edible city. These are some examples of sort of different destinations and different programs that they have around the city. For example, I think it's super interesting, the bottom right, that they have an archaeological garden at the local archaeological site, where they grow plants that were common in Roman and medieval times. And the bottom, the trailer that you see is a mobile school garden that is parked around the city that visits different kindergartens, but also when it's not visiting different kindergartens, it sits on Main Street. So this is a fantastic example of more than 10 different destinations within the city that add up to this very attractive place to visit. And again, you don't need to have an interest in gardening to enjoy spending time. And maybe you're interested in archaeology, maybe you're just a primary school student, maybe you're interested in innovative social programs, maybe you're more into pollinators and biodiversity. Different people come here for many and different reasons, but they all enjoy meeting in these different spots. And then sometimes a community garden can also be like a part of a bigger vision. So the garden itself isn't the main objective. We run a small permaculture garden at the curb of a shopping center here in Oslo. It was initiated by the owners, and it's part of a general upgrade of the center that included indoor renovations. The local library was upgraded. They made refurbished a park on the back side of the building. And this terrace is for the pub with the cheapest beer in Oslo. So that tells us something about the clientele that usually hangs out there. It's a quite loud and rowdy clientele. But one of the feedbacks that we've gotten from the neighbors is that since we added this garden, it attracts a more varied clientele. And that has helped to sort of pacify the craziest of the regular guests. So it can have a pacifying effect on the local community indirectly as well. And Linderud is a spectacular example of a community garden being a part of a larger vision. So here the museum curators, they've had a very innovative strategy of opening up the property to many different community groups. The largest in terms of space is the community garden and the CSA and the startups, etc. But there's also a climbing park with an obstacle course. There's a hugely popular annual Halloween party, which is quite a creepy one. They have these historically themed picnics in the summer. They have jobs training programs for former drug addicts doing gardening and beekeeping, and they even have a small souvenir shop that sells apple juice made from the apple trees in the garden, etc. So it's a great example of the community garden adding to the greater vision of this historical manor becoming a community hub. Our role has been more to support the museum and the municipality in some of the programs. But yeah, it's great to see how it has developed over the 3 years now that it's been running. Yeah, it's also important to mention triangulation. So adding more stuff, adding more activities doesn't necessarily work if you haven't connected, like truly connected with the community. This is the same place as this one. Yeah. So when it looked like this, that only lasted for 6 months until the municipality sort of packed it away for the winter. And since then, they have tried several times to re-establish this initially very successful project, but it has failed. And they've done all the triangulation, right? They've added new chess pieces, new planter boxes. They have a slack line. They've had a pop-up art gallery. They've had lots of activities and stuff there, but it hasn't worked because the ones that do use the area were never a part of the conversation of how it should be used. So this is what it looks like today. And yes, that bottle in the bottom left corner, that is a vodka bottle. So yeah. Principle number 9, to experiment with lighter, quicker, and cheaper. When piloting, you can use simple furniture to begin with, and then as the place develops and as you learn what kind of furniture the community wants, that's when you start adding it. At Stensparken, our first year, we actually had a little bit of funding to build an outdoor tool shed, but we decided to buy a greenhouse instead because that could double as a storage facility as well. We quickly realized that it's too small to actually do all the things that we want to do. So one of the things that the community and the teenagers that work with us have asked for is that they're dreaming of a much larger greenhouse. So we're now talking with an architect, and we're looking to find funding to realize this sort of grander vision. But we're very happy that we started with a small one, because the idea of a greenhouse, a larger greenhouse, wouldn't have come up without it. And then lighter, quicker, cheaper also means that when you have a community meeting and when you're asking for their ideas, it's very important to take some of the simple things that people ask for and do it right away. Because that gives people a feeling of having been heard, that their opinions matter, that there was a point to joining this community meeting. Here, for example, these youth did the place game. And one of the things that they wanted would be to have more colors and more flower beds. So the next day we went out, bought some perennial flowers and made some garden beds right by the entrance of the place. And it's actually been really good to sort of better indicate that this is where the entrance lies. So working iteratively, starting, testing, piloting, doing it simple to begin with, and also to do some quick makeover changes as soon as possible so that people are being heard. And of course, always provide the selfie opportunity. That I think that sort of brings us to a full circle in this presentation. I've included links to many sources for much more reading. PPS is the main one, Project for Public Spaces, but you can also check out these ones. This is the moment where you should be screenshotting the presentation, and also some of the key authors that talk about placemaking. Please take my email address so you can contact us for potential collaborations, consultancy, project ideas, yeah, partnerships, etc. I wanted to round off with this photo from that winter event that I mentioned, because it so clearly illustrates that a community garden is a public space 365 days of the year. But the times that we are actively gardening, especially in Norway, but I mean everywhere else as well, is limited. So we have to think of it as a public space and fill it with activities that benefit the community throughout the year. And the text on the ribbon that I'm carrying, that was my wish that I put up on that day. And it says, I dream about us getting better at taking care of the planet. And this is what this is all about. I think the most important thing we can all do in terms of sustainability, in terms of edible city solutions, is to get people talking, to start a conversation, because when people start talking to each other, the first thing they start talking about is the weather. And then the link to start talking about sustainability is actually very short. You can't talk to anyone about the weather this year without talking about the heat, the drought, what is happening to our climate and nature. But yes, rounding off with thinking about places and placemaking and being placemakers rather than community gardeners and project managers. Thinking about making places where people smile and talk to each other and enjoy each other's company and have different reasons and motivations to go to a place. And also cultivate cabbage. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I'm open for questions and comments. There's 2 things in the chat. I don't know what that is, but yeah, that's all I had. Thank you.